Week 5 of the fantasy baseball season, and he has a few hitters on the rise this week. The first guy you can Carlo Stanton of the New York Yankees. So Stanton, he was off to a slow start the first few weeks of the season, but now he's really kicked it into gear on the season. He's ranked 52nd in fantasy baseball, 34 for 109, 9 home runs, 23 RBIs, 16 runs scored, a 312 batting average, and a 364 on base. So Stanton here, he's been on a tear over the last few weeks, and in this time he's ranked number 2 in fantasy baseball, 25 for 52, 6 home runs, 11 RBIs, 11 runs scored, a 481 batting average, and a 509 on base percentage. So right now Stanton, he's mashing the baseball. He's hitting the baseball well, and this is the Stanton of a few seasons ago, reminds me, in his last year with the Miami Marlins, where he hit 59 home runs. And that's the type of pace he's on right now. But obviously the last 3 or 4 seasons, we just know what the problem is with Stanton, and it's been the injury bug. But right now he's producing at a big rate, and he's a player definitely on the rise. And the last few games for him, May 2nd versus Detroit, 1 for 3. May 4th versus Houston, 4 for 5 with a homer and 3 RBIs. May 5th versus Houston, 3 for 4 with a homer and 4 RBIs. And then May 6th versus Houston, 1 for 4 with a homer. So right here, Stanton versus Houston, he just owned them in that series with a huge series with 3 home runs in 3 consecutive games. And now he's got a series versus the Washington Nationals coming up here this week. A team he's definitely familiar with, obviously, when he played with the Miami Marlins and had the battles with the Nats over the years. So right now, Stanton, he's mashing the baseball, and he's definitely on the rise this week. The second guy's Andrew Benintendi of the Kansas City Royals. So Benintendi, maybe a change of scenery is going to go a long way for him this season, getting out of Boston and going with the Kansas City Royals here. So on the season, he's ranked 116, is Benintendi, 29 for 105, 3 home runs, 10 RBIs, 5 stolen bases, a 276 batting average, and a 345 on base with 18 runs scored. But over the last few weeks, he's ranked number 8 in fantasy baseball in the time, 18 for 44, 3 home runs, 6 RBIs, 10 runs scored, 2 stolen bases, a 409 batting average, and a 469 on base. So Benintendi early in the season, he just couldn't get anything going. But right now, he's getting about 2 hits a game over the last week or 2 here for this Royal team. And this Royal team, they were on a pretty good hot streak until this week, though. But Benintendi was definitely a big part of it. And the last few games for him, May 2nd at Minnesota, 2 for 4 with a run. May 3rd versus Cleveland, 1 for 4 with a run. May 4th, 2 for 5 with a stolen base versus Cleveland. May 5th versus Cleveland, 2 for 4 with a run. And then yesterday versus Cleveland, 1 for 4 in that one. So he's getting a hit or 2 a game, like I mentioned. And right here, there was a lot of pressure on him in Boston for sure with Benintendi, but right here in Kansas City, where there's not much media, there's not much pressure, and you just go out there and do your job and play baseball, he's playing well. And for fantasy owners who picked him up early in the season or just drafted him as a late round flyer, it's definitely paying off for them, and he's definitely contributing and on the rise this week. The next player is Isaiah Finler Kafler of the Texas Rangers. So this guy, he's got a lot of fantasy appeal, especially that he plays every day, and he qualifies at catcher, third base, and shortstop. So right here on the season, Kinner for foul on the season, he's ranked 78, 36 for 132, 5 home runs, 14 RBIs, 6 stolen bases, 20 runs scored, a 273 batting average, and a 322 on base. And over the last few weeks here, he's ranked number 9 in fantasy baseball, 19 for 53, 3 home runs, 7 RBIs, 4 stolen bases, a 358 batting average, a 417 on base, and 9 runs scored. So Kinner Fafula, he's playing real well for this Texas Ranger team, and he's in the lineup each and every day, batting either first or seventh, depending if they're versing a lefty or righty here. Right here, Texas, they don't have that many great of hitters on their roster. So right here, Kinler Fowler, he's playing every day. And with his qualifications at catcher, he's a huge player this season for fantasy baseball. In the last few games for him, May 2nd versus Boston, 2 for 3 with a homer, a stolen base, and 2 runs scored. May 3rd at Minnesota, 1 for 4 with a stolen base. May 4th at Minnesota, 0 for 3 with a run and an RBI. May 5th in Minnesota, 0 for 3. And then yesterday to conclude that series at Minnesota. 2 for 3 with an RBI, so it seems like he's getting a hit or two a game almost, even though in May 4th and 5th he didn't have a hit in that game. But he's still giving fantasy owners a lot of different things here. He could steal bases, he's still scoring runs, and he's a good ball player, and he's a player here in Week 5, definitely rising up the rankings. The next player is C.J. Cron, or the Colorado Rockies. So Cron, another player like Stanton and Benintendi, the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season, he just didn't do much here for fantasy owners of the Rockies. And on the season, he's ranked 107, 27 and 93, 5 home runs, 15 RBIs, 17 runs scored, a 290 batting average, and a great 394 on base percentage. And over the last few weeks, he's ranked number 14 in this time. 4 home runs, 7 RBIs, 9 runs scored, a 415 batting average, and a 510 on base in 41 at-bats. So right now, he's knocking the cover off the ball. And Cron definitely was a sleeper for me coming into the season. A guy with 30-plus home run potential, but to see him batting 290 right now is definitely a surprise in my opinion. He's more of a 210 to 230 type of hitter is Cron. And to see him on the season to have a 394 on base as well is very impressive. So right now, he's playing pretty much every day here for this Rocky team. And he's been a force in the middle of the lineup, batting 4th or 5th for most of the season. So the last few games here for Cron: May 1st at Arizona, 2 for 6 with a run. May 2nd, he pinched hit in that one, 1 for 1. May 3rd, they were rained out. May 4th, 2 for 6 in the doubleheader, a homer, 2 RBIs in that one. But he did strike out 4 times, and yesterday they gave him the rest. But Cron right here, he's a player with power, and he's going to strike out a lot as well. That's the downfall for him. But right now that he's hitting 290 and that the on-base is almost 400, he's a player definitely rising up the rankings, especially where he started the season, way down there in the 5th and final hitter. Rising up the rankings this week here is Brandon Crawford of the San Francisco Giants. And Crawford, over the last few seasons, we've seen good hot flashes and streaks from him. But right here this season, not many people drafted him in fantasy leagues and they didn't expect much from him. So on the season, he's only rostered so far in 7% of fantasy leagues. So right now, this year, he's ranked 117, 19 of 78, 6 home runs, 14 RBIs, 3 stolen bases, 14 runs scored, a 244 batting average, and a 337 on base. But this last couple weeks here is where he's picked it up and put the stats in. So he's ranked 21 in the last few weeks, 7 of 17, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, 7 runs scored, a stolen base, a 412 batting average, and a whopping 583 on base percentage. Crawford, he's getting on base right now over the last few weeks, over 50% of the time, and that's a crazy rate that obviously won't stay put. But right now, if he's on your waiver wire, which he is in 93% of fantasy leagues, he's a player you shouldn't ignore, and you should go out there and get with him rising up the rankings here in the last few games for him. April 30th, 0 for 1 at San Diego. Then he missed a couple games, May 1st and May 2nd at San Diego with a little bit of an injury. May 3rd's ball game at Colorado rained out. And then the last couple games here, May 4th in a doubleheader versus the Rockies. 3 for 3 in that one, a homer, 2 RBIs, and 2 runs scored. And then last night at Coors Field, 1 for 2 with a homer, 2 RBIs, a stolen base, and 2 runs. So Brandon Crawford, it looks like he's pretty healed from that calf injury that cost him a couple games early in the week. And right now, I would go out there and get him. He's rising up the rankings. He's hitting the ball well. And shortstop's not that great of a position this season in fantasy baseball. So that's a few hitters that are rising up the rankings here in Week 5 of the fantasy baseball season.